to love and value the ocean for everything it gives us. Fun outdoor activities, romantic walks on the beach, even the food on the grocery store shelves, and the oxygen we breathe. The ocean once created life on our planet. Thanks to it, we live. But it can take this life away just as easily. Yes, the ocean can be dangerous, and it often is. And are there some places where such dangers abound the most? Today, you're going to find out. Why are the most beautiful places on the planet also the most deadly? How did one diver accidentally film his own death underwater? On what beach in the US will you for sure find yourself a couple of feet away from a shark without knowing it? And why has the Cape of Good Hope deprived thousands of sailors of their last hope? Top 10 Most Dangerous Places of the World Ocean. By the way, if you love our content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to see more interesting content from us. Let's dive down into probably the most dangerous dive site in the world. It's also known as the Diver's Cemetery, and you're about to find out where such an ominous name came from. Off the coast of Egypt, 8 kilometers, 5 miles north of the city of Dahab, there is an underwater vertical cave going more than 100 meters, 328 feet into the depths of the Red Sea. It is not just a deep hole, but a karst cave with a unique structure. It starts with a shallow opening to the sea about 6 meters, 20 feet deep. It is called the Saddle. Then there is a 26-meter, 85-foot-long tunnel known as the Arch. Its ceiling lies much deeper, 55 meters, 181 feet below the surface. The bottom of the cave then lowers as it moves away from the shore towards the open sea to a depth of about 120 meters, 394 feet. The hole itself and its surroundings are teeming with gorgeous corals and no less beautiful reef fish. In addition, there is an easy way to enter the water. No waves on the surface and no currents under the water. It would seem to be an ideal place for diving. Why is it called the Diver's Cemetery? There are no journalistic tricks here. Many divers really died in this place. Data varies. Some sources claim 130 deaths between 1997 and 2012, while others give gloomier figures, up to 200 victims. Memorial plaques installed on the shore are an eloquent reminder that this is not a myth or an urban legend. There is someone's name written on each plaque. There is still no consensus on what makes the blue hole of the Red Sea the deadliest diving site on Earth. Its geological structure is not that complicated. Some believe that this is what has played a cruel joke on many divers. Less experienced divers could have simply underestimated the treachery of this place. The second point is the fact that this place is popular not only among scuba divers, but also among free divers, breath-hold divers, just because of the lack of waves and underwater currents. And free diving is obviously much more dangerous than scuba diving. Combined, all these factors have created this ominous statistic. But the blue hole, even despite its reputation, continues to attract many adventurous thrill seekers who dive into its depths almost daily. So while some try to stay away from the blue hole, others still want to pass through the tunnel that has led to so many deaths. The bodies of dead divers sometimes remain lying in this rocky trap for a long time, and some of these creepy scenes can even be captured by other, more fortunate divers. A young Russian-Israeli diving instructor, Yuri Lipsky, in 2000, filmed his own death in the blue hole with a helmet camera. We will come back to this story a little later as it contains some important details. But first, let's talk about some things for a better understanding. A place that gathers so many victims could not do without legends of various degrees of plausibility. The Blue Hole got its legend about a curse. And it arose, according to the legend, after a woman who couldn't bear a marriage of convenience with a man she didn't love decided to drown herself in the hole. The typical, albeit naive story was wandering in the minds until a 53-year-old technical diver from Dahab, Tariq Omar, became interested in it. He began exploring the Blue Hole in 1992 and quickly discovered the bodies of dead divers. He became really famous in 1997 when he brought the first 2 bodies to the surface. Since then, he says he has taken more than 20 bodies out of the water, for which he earned the grim nickname, the Bone Collector. So it was Tariq Omar who recovered the body of 22-year-old Yuri Lipsky, a man who filmed his own death in this ominous place. The heartbreaking footage is still available on YouTube and makes the blood run cold in the veins of viewers. In the video, Lipsky makes an involuntary and uncontrolled descent, eventually landing on the seafloor at a depth of 115 meters. There, he panics, removes his regulator, and tries to fill his buoyancy compensator, but is unable to rise. At such a depth, with such a high rate of diving, he was most likely overtaken by what is known as nitrogen narcosis. The poor diver probably experienced mental fog and even hallucinations, in addition to the obvious panic and confusion. This footage made Lipsky's death the most notorious diver death at this site, and one of the most notorious diver deaths in the world. Lipsky's body was recovered the next day. It was found by the very same Tariq Omar we talked about earlier. He was personally asked to do so by the dead guy's mother. It is noteworthy that Omar had previously twice warned Yuri against trying to dive. That's an eerie and sad story related to one of the most beautiful places on Earth. And now we're going to dive into another place with a similar name, the Great Blue Hole. It is located off the coast of Belize, a state on the east coast of Central America. It is almost the world's largest oceanic sinkhole, measuring 318 meters, 1,043 feet across, and 124 meters, 407 feet deep. By some estimates, it is the second largest after the Dragon Hole in the Paracel Islands region. It was formed when this place was land. The hole was formed as a regular karst sinkhole in several stages between 153,000 and 15,000 years ago during the Quaternary glaciation. When the sea level rose, it was submerged. In the 1970s, the place was made famous by the legendary explorer Jacques-Yves Cousteau. Since then, it has become popular among divers. But its internal structure, features, and what lies at the very bottom remained a mystery for a long time. In 2019, an ambitious and even starry team made an expedition to the Great Blue Hole. Billionaire Richard Branson and Fabien Cousteau, grandson of the legendary explorer, joined Erica Bergman, National Geographic explorer and pilot of the Aquatica submarines. They successfully descended to the bottom of the abyss. This dramatic dive was somewhat similar to entering the atmosphere of a distant planet. That's because as the vessel descended, it passed through layers of water, the chemical composition of which was drastically different from ordinary seawater. And the most prominent role in this was played by hydrogen sulfide. We know this gas well because of its unpleasant odor of rot and rotten eggs. It's a permanent companion of almost any organic decomposition process. In high concentrations, it's toxic. So, descending into the depths of the Great Blue Hole, at a certain point, the sensors of the vessel recorded a sharp increase in the concentration of this gas. It happened at a depth of about 88 to 90 meters, 290 to 300 feet. A layer of dissolved hydrogen sulfide covered the entire hole. How did it get there? And can it be dangerous? Here, the explorers got a much more thrilling experience than they had expected. The layer of gas actually outlined a conditional death zone that began at this depth. All living creatures that fell into the hole and died there inevitably decompose, releasing hydrogen sulfide. This gas is poorly soluble in water and certainly not heavier than it. That's why the concentration had to be high enough for it to stay at such a depth. But decomposition processes, among other things, also consume oxygen. Gradually, all the oxygen in the water at the bottom of the hole ran out. So it happened that nothing could survive from a certain depth level. There was simply no oxygen to breathe. This place is gloomy, not only in the figurative sense, but also in the literal sense. A layer of hydrogen sulfide prevents sunlight, so this hole is not only blue, but also very dark. Hydrogen sulfide, oxygen-free environment, and pitch darkness. This was just the scenery of the eerie picture the intrepid explorers eventually saw. At the bottom of the blue hole, they discovered human bodies. As it turns out, these were the bodies of 2 of the 3 missing divers. For ethical reasons, the crew refused to attempt to recover the bodies themselves. They left them buried in the sea and reported the gruesome find to the authorities after surfacing. The crew discovered other things in the blue hole that were not so creepy. On the contrary, they were bizarre and even mesmerizing. These were huge stalactites, stone icicles formed on the ceiling when the blue hole was a regular karst cave, not submerged under the seawater. Stalactites are formed by the slow dripping of water droplets and the crystallization of minerals as the droplets dry at the very tip of the mineral stone. Some of them are over 12 meters, 40 feet long, and 0.6 meters, 2 feet in diameter. Interestingly, the stalactites in the hole were tilted 12 degrees, although they can only form strictly vertically from the cave ceiling. What's the reason? It must be the shift of tectonic plates over the last 100,000 years. This is quite possible, as even whole continents tilt due to the slipping and sliding of tectonic plates. Now, let's leave this gloomy, though undeniably scenic place and move on to the beaches. As you can easily guess, not ordinary beaches, but dangerous ones. This Florida beach has been called the shark bite capital of the world. Why? Because you are 10 times more likely to be bitten by a shark here than anywhere else in the United States. Florida has some of the most stunning beaches in the United States, and they're always packed with visitors. However, one of these beaches has been hitting the headlines in recent years, but not at all because of its beauty. Yes, we are talking about New Smyrna Beach, which boasts 27 kilometers, 17 miles of beautiful coastline. Surfers flock here for amazing waves. The New Smyrna Beach area is also known around the world for its family-friendly attractions, restaurants, and stores. But amidst this idyllic location, there is one major drawback. There have been multiple terrifying shark encounters on the beach in recent years. For example, in September 2023, a 38-year-old surfer was bitten in the face by a shark as he was coming off a wave. In total, there have been 5 shark incidents at New Smyrna Beach in 2023. And a year earlier, in September 2022, a 27-year-old woman was walking chest deep in water when a shark bit her on the right side of her body. Do you feel like these are sporadic incidents not worth paying much attention to? Well, it depends. According to the International Shark Attack File, there are 9 unprovoked shark attacks per year in Volusia County, where New Smyrna Beach is located. And these are just the cases of actual direct attacks. Meanwhile, there have been so many cases of a shark circling around an unsuspecting surfer and pondering whether to attack him or not. According to the same file, anyone swimming at New Smyrna Beach was within 3 meters, 10 feet of a shark. This makes attack statistics look a bit less insignificant, doesn't it? You might think this fact discourages people from visiting this Florida beach, right? It's quite the opposite. Many surfers who hope to catch a glimpse of sharks only get a greater surfing experience from the abundance of sharks. But back to the question of what attracts sharks to New Smyrna Beach. You probably didn't know this, but most shark bites actually occur near the surf zones. There's actually a quite logical explanation for this. Surfers and sharks seem to prefer the same areas of shore, and, if we can say so, the same types of water. Both sharks and surfers like the part of the ocean where the waves smash against the rising shoreline. Their goals differ. Surfers come here to have fun, and sharks to hunt. At high tide, large and small fish head for the shallow waters in search of food, digging in the water plants along the seashores. That's where they fall prey to sharks. Ironically, sharks do not actually have anything against humans, let alone consciously hunt them. Almost all attacks, including fatal ones, happen by mistake. Sharks mistake a dabbling bather or surfer for a large, tasty fish and therefore attack them. And sensing that there is obviously something wrong, literally spits out the poor victim. The trouble is that even a light bite from a terrible shark's mouth is often enough to cause fatal wounds. And now we move to another location in the ocean with an equally creepy nickname. If you ever travel to the beautiful Hawaiian island of Kauai, you can visit the so-called Pool of Death in the town of Princeville on the north shore of the island. It received this ominous name because of the frequent drownings of swimmers, even experienced ones. Another name for this place, Queen's Bath, dates back to the times when the local aristocracy bathed there. What is this place? It is a small cove surrounded by rocky walls. It is notorious for its sudden high tides and is considered extremely dangerous for bathing. But how can the tide be sudden? They happen on a regular schedule, don't they? That's right, but the shoreline structure here is such that the high tide is fast, rough, and chaotic. And if you don't stand on the shore and wait for it with a stopwatch, it can really catch you by surprise. The water here can turn from calm to chaos in a matter of seconds, posing a deadly threat. A careless swimmer can be smashed against the rocks by a wave, dragged to the bottom where he won't have enough air to swim out. Or they can get carried away into the ocean where he certainly won't have any chance. Despite the obvious dangers, Queen's Bath remains a popular Kauai attraction. Visitors regularly sneak here, ignoring authorities' efforts to install fences, strengthen safety, and renew warning signs. There is often jamming in the parking lot at the trail leading to the Queen's Bath. The period from fall to spring, when the gates to the site remain closed, is when danger is at its peak. However, this doesn't deter thrill seekers either. Quite the opposite. Alas, for some, this adventure was the last. In total, there are at least 30 known deaths associated with this place. On the way to the pool, you will see a stone plaque warning that unexpected large waves can wash you off the rocks into the ocean. Other signs explicitly say, "Danger. Many people have drowned here." It is said that violators can be sued. Like if you have to be rescued, you will pay for it later with money. You have been warned. At least one person who needed help at Queen's Bath did get a bill. This was personally claimed by county spokeswoman Kim Tamaoka. But none of that stopped the company of 3 men in October 2023. The intrepid swimmers decided to challenge the notorious Pool of Death. A photographer who was present captured the trio repeatedly jumping into the water, unaware of the ominous turn of events that might await them in this charming but treacherous pool. While they were enjoying the pastime, the water level dropped dramatically and then rose sharply. Two of the friends were carried off the rocks into the turbulent water, and the third jumped to his friends for some unknown reason. Maybe he wanted to rescue them, or on the spur of the moment, did not realize the danger and did not understand what was happening. Struggling with the ruthless waves, they tried their best to stay afloat and get to a safe place among the rocks. At the end of the video, we can see two of them successfully climbing the rocks, but the fate of the third remains unknown. But this place is dangerous for another reason as well. The path to Queen's Bath is very steep, and often tourists get sprains, fractures, and heart attacks along the way. So if you are seeking a thrill, think carefully before heading here, just so that things don't get too thrilling. And now we move on to a place that has scared the hell out of even the bravest of seafarers for centuries. Imagine waking up in a ship's cabin with the dizzying sensation as if your bed is swinging in a hammock. The unpredictable lurching of the ship tosses chairs and everything in the cabin. The walls, ceiling, and floor creak as if everything is about to fall apart. By midday, the wave reaches 6 to 8 meters, 20 to 26 feet, and the wind is 50 knots. That is 92 kilometers per hour, 57 miles per hour. The crew turns the ship a few degrees east of the planned route so that the waves hit the side with at least a little less force. Yes, it's a real storm, but still pretty moderate compared to what the Drake Passage you are in is capable of. You could easily have caught 11 to 12 meter, 35 to 40 foot waves here too. Imagine that the waves gradually subsided the next day, and the next morning you came across an iceberg, a block of ice 549 meters, 600 yards in diameter. The Antarctic is nigh hand, and so are the humpback whales you can admire. Assuming, of course, you can distract yourself from watching a drifting iceberg that evokes unpleasant associations with the Titanic. The Drake Passage is the body of water between South America's Cape Horn, Chile, Argentina, and the South Shetland Islands of Antarctica. It connects the southwestern Atlantic Ocean with the southeastern Pacific Ocean. The passage is named after the 16th century English explorer Sir Francis Drake. Despite the fact that the passage bears this name, the Encyclopedia Britannica and other modern sources report that in reality, the English captain was not the first to pass through it. It was done only in 1616 by the expedition of Flemish navigator Willem Schuttem, and Drake just discovered this intercontinental passage. The average depth of the passage is about 3,400 meters, 11,000 feet, with deeper areas reaching 4,800 meters, 15,600 feet near the northern and southern boundaries. Its width is also impressive and makes 998 kilometers, 620 miles, which is roughly the distance from London to Berlin. It is the widest passage on the planet, and with such dimensions, the passage is considered one of the most dangerous to navigate. The water in the passage is far from stagnant, with a strong eastward current. The severe climate brings frequent and violent storms, which are exacerbated by the proximity of Antarctica, an inexhaustible source of dangerous icebergs. Historically, the passage is literally a graveyard of numerous ships that tried to pass it against the currents and winds. It has had a sad fame since the time of Magellan and up to the opening of the Panama Canal, which drew almost all the most important routes of South America. Nowadays, of course, this route is much safer than in the past, but incidents still happen here. Just recently, in December 2022, the ship Viking Polaris, going through the Drake Passage to the Argentine city of Ushuaia had bad luck. A so-called rogue wave crashed against it, causing damage. Some passengers even thought they had run into an iceberg. As a result, 4 passengers were injured, and 62-year-old Sherry Zhu died. So this place is still considered dangerous. Safe navigation through the passage in relatively calm weather is possible only for cargo ships of very large displacement, such as tankers and container ships of the Panamax class, large warships, and submarines. Well, we head further out to dive into another dangerous part of the world ocean, Queensland, Australia. Why are the waters of Queensland dangerous? There are predators here that use ambush tactics, such as lying in wait at the water's edge to catch their prey. These are crocodiles. Their habitat, North Queensland, is known as croc country. But of course, they can also be found beyond its borders. Did you know that crocodiles can stay underwater for more than an hour and can hide completely, even in knee-deep shallow water? So if you don't see a crocodile, it doesn't mean it's not around. Crocodiles are most active at night, at dusk, and dawn. They may move upstream during high tides and floods, and may move into new areas where they have not been seen before. The smaller the vessel, the greater risk of meeting crocodiles. There have been cases of them dragging people off small boats. Despite this, visitors to North Queensland often ignore numerous crocodile warning signs. But locals know very well that these signs are there for a reason. Crocodiles are an obvious and real danger in the north. The controversy about crocodiles was revived with renewed vigor in 2023 after the death of fisherman Kevin Darmati. He fell victim to 2 reptiles at once. There have been 47 attacks on humans in North Queensland since 1985, and their frequency has increased menacingly lately. And this issue has a long history. In the 1970s, crocodiles were almost completely exterminated in this area. But almost. The predators quickly recovered their population. Now, there are tens of thousands of them. The State Department of Environment predicts that the population will continue to grow by 2.2% per year, and it is already well underway. Crocodiles have been seen even in the south, outside of what is traditionally regarded as croc country. In other words, they have begun to expand their territory. However, after an extensive study in 2021, the department said it is unlikely that the crocodile population in the south will ever reach the level of the Northern Territory. The reason is the limited area of suitable habitat. But crocodiles are not the only dangerous creatures in Queensland. It is also home to the blue-ringed octopus. These animals get their name because of the iridescent blue marks they display when threatened. Sometimes they even appear in Sydney. In March 2023, one such octopus bit a woman on Sydney's North Shore several times while she was swimming. Blue-ringed octopuses are extremely venomous. These creatures produce a fast-acting toxin that causes paralysis, depresses respiratory centers, and inevitably leads to death in just 15 minutes unless the victim gets qualified help. So the woman who got bitten in Sydney was really lucky to survive this. Now we're going to South Africa. The Cape of Good Hope awaits us there. Despite its peaceful name, the area is notorious for numerous shipwrecks. Thousands of ships have met their doom here, and the Cape remains very treacherous to this day. The Cape is located at the southern tip of the Cape Peninsula, south of Cape Town, the second largest city in the Republic of South Africa after Johannesburg. Interestingly, it was originally named Cape of Storms in the 1840s by Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias. Allegedly, the name was mentioned in a report to the Portuguese King John II because Dias described conditions around the Cape as very rough. It was later renamed Cape of Good Hope to attract more people to the Cape Sea route. According to another version, the King of Portugal, encouraged by Diaz's discovery, named it Cape of Good Hope because it offered a promising prospect of reaching the markets of India. Over time, the Cape became an important port and staging area for soldiers traveling from Europe to Asia. However, the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 provided a much shorter way from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean, making the long voyage around Africa inefficient. So why are the waters near the Cape, where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans meet, so dangerous for ships? The thing is that the warm current from the east meets the cold current from the northwest there, and with strong winds typical for the area, the conditions for shipping become bleak. It is no wonder that the Cape of Good Hope is associated with the legend of the Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship doomed to sail the oceans forever. According to the legend, while trying to round the Cape of Good Hope, the ship got into a strong storm. The navigator suggested to wait out the bad weather in a safe place, for example, somewhere in the bay. But the fierce captain shot him and a few other disgruntled sailors, and then swore that none of the crew would go ashore until they rounded the Cape, even if it would take eternity. A voice from the sky said, "Let it be so." In all, at least 2,000 ships have sunk in South African waters, one for every kilometer, 0.6 miles of coastline on average. Ships sink around the Cape more often than in many parts of the open ocean. Many of them date back to the days of European exploration and voyages to India and Asia. But not all of them. In 1911, a year before the Titanic sank in the Atlantic, the passenger liner SS Lusitania had mistaken Cape Town's lighthouse for the southernmost point of the continent, turned too steeply and wrecked, hitting land. A couple of years earlier, dozens of other ships had also misjudged the situation due to that ill-fated lighthouse, so it was later moved further south. Another similarly notorious and even epic incident occurred in 1942. The U.S. warship SS Thomas Tucker ran aground at Cape Point during its maiden voyage and was washed ashore. The ship was loaded with nothing less than Sherman tanks, trucks, spare parts, and barbed wire. It was on its way to the Suez Canal, where the Allies were engaged in a North African campaign against Hitler's forces. In an attempt to avoid an encounter with an Italian patrol submarine, the captain changed course and headed straight for Cape Olifantspos in thick fog. Only then did the captain discover that his compass had deviated 37 degrees, but it was too late. The rescue effort took as long as 5 months, and it was a great undertaking. But the valuable cargo was worth it, and eventually most of it was saved. The wreck of the Thomas Tucker still lies on the rocks of Cape Olifantspos. Now, South Africa even offers tourists a special route, the Shipwreck Trail, along the part of the coast where at least 120 ships, including the Thomas Tucker, were lost between 1682 and 1992. That's the good hope this cape sometimes brings. And now we're going to visit an area of the Pacific Ocean with a similarly evocative name. On October 1st, 2023, a sailor named Felix Louis Najai from the Bay Area on the coast of Northern California was reported missing. Before that, he had been swimming with 2 friends at the beach. According to witnesses, they saw a shark nearby. People also noticed a blood puddle where the swimmer was last seen. The alleged victim of the great white shark has not been found. This part of the shoreline is in the area infamously known as the Red Triangle, which is the colloquial name for the roughly triangular-shaped region. From the shore, you have a serene view of beautiful beaches full of sea lions and seals. However, things are not so serene in the water. During the fall months, an unseen danger lurks in the seawaters off the California coast, the great white shark. Considering the high population in the few areas of the world where white sharks live, those who enjoy ocean leisure in California are at great risk of encountering these predators. Yes, dangers from toothy predators await not only at New Smyrna Beach, which we covered earlier in the video. A preliminary assessment conducted in 2006 found that about 38% of reported great white shark attacks on humans in the United States happened specifically in the Red Triangle area. At the time, this amounted to 11% of the global rate. In the last 30 years, since 1993, there have been 6 fatalities caused by white sharks in California. However, the number of non-fatal human encounters with white sharks in the South has increased in recent years. Such incidents are occurring throughout the state, with one of the highest rates seen in Southern California. This is directly related to the increase in white shark populations since California began a campaign aimed at protecting the species in 1994. From 2014 to 2019, tourist cage dives were practiced to observe sharks within the Guadalupe Island Biosphere Reserve. The data indicated a gradual increase in the overall population of great white sharks, and in 2014 to 2016, unprecedented cases of appearances of young white sharks were recorded in Central California. They were mostly individuals with a body length of less than 2.5 meters, 8 feet. Previously, the young preferred to stay in the warmer waters of the Southern California current. Despite the case of 2023, Stanford scientists claim that the chances of being bitten or, moreover, eaten by a shark are still very small. According to the study, scuba divers are 6,897 times more likely to be hospitalized due to diving-related decompression sickness than white shark bites. Divers have a 1 in 136 million chance of being bitten, while surfers have a 1 in 17 million chance. Nevertheless, when bathing in the Red Triangle area, be aware of the risks, even the small ones. Or better yet, sail further with us. This is the strangest and even paradoxical sea on the planet. It's teeming with life, and yet capable of insidious murder. It has the calmest weather, but has always been one of the areas with the most ship sinkings. It doesn't even have shores. A sea without shores. A sea of wreckage. A sea of ghosts. A desert in the ocean. Such nicknames were given to this part of the Atlantic Ocean. By the way, most of the infamous Bermuda Triangle is located in the Saraso Sea. Coincidence? Let's look into it. First of all, what does a sea without shores mean? How can something like that exist? The point is that its boundaries are defined not by land, but by ocean currents. Yes, this is largely a matter of agreement and compromise among scientists, not a clear definition. But in this case, there was no other option. This area of the ocean is just too unusual. The sea is bounded to the west by the Gulf Stream, to the north by the North Atlantic Current, to the east by the Canary Current, and to the south by the North Atlantic Equatorial Current. All 4 together form a clockwise circulating system of ocean currents called the North Atlantic Gyre. The Saraso Sea is located approximately between 20 degrees and 35 degrees north latitude and 40 degrees and 70 degrees west longitude. It is approximately 1,100 kilometers, 600 nautical miles wide, and 3,200 kilometers, 1,750 nautical miles long. Bermuda is near the western end of the sea. Okay, first oddity solved. But still, why are there so many terrifying legends and myths about it? Indeed, this area has scared even the most courageous navigators since the time of Columbus. And even Christopher Columbus personally expressed his concerns, fearing that this place might become a grave for the entire expedition. So what is this ominous force? The answer is surprisingly simple and trivial. Algae. Yes, it's the seaweed from which the sea got its name. Sargassum is a genus of marine brown algae that floats on the surface of the ocean. It's very viable and vigorously growing. It is found in many places in the Atlantic, but in the Saraso Sea, due to the circular current, it accumulates in enormous quantities. This made sailing very difficult during the age of exploration. Indeed, many ships were sunk here because of the algae. The algae itself made navigation difficult, but it also hampered sailors' ability to determine depth, which increased the risk of running aground. It wasn't just algae that caused trouble for sailors of the past. Due to the same circular current inside the Saraso Sea, the weather is mostly too calm and windless. This is an advantage for modern ships, but for sailing ships, it's a disaster. The fact is that a sailing ship needs at least some wind to be able to move, even an adverse wind. Sailing ships can move even against the wind, and dead calm is the worst case. There were many cases where ships were stuck in such a windless trap in the Saraso Sea for many days, and the crew suffered from lack of food and fresh water. It is the combination of these unique features that has brought this area of the Atlantic such notoriety. Nowadays, there's a new threat from sargassum. There is too much of it. So much that huge amounts of rotting algae are washed ashore, creating a real ecological disaster. Giant multi-meter layers of decaying algae release hydrogen sulfide and other harmful gases, which, in such volumes, may endanger the health of the coastal region's residents. And finally, we move on to another strange part of the ocean. There are many different legends about this place. What they have in common is that they all mention missing ships and ghost ships drifting without crew. This is the Devil's Sea, or Ma no Umi in Japanese. In fact, it's a phrase the Japanese use commonly to describe dangerous sea places around the world. So there are many places called Ma no Umi, but this one is special. These infamous waters are located around the Miyake, a Japanese island about 100 kilometers south of Tokyo. There are other names for the place: the Pacific Bermuda Triangle and the Dragon's Triangle. The dragon in the name comes from a Chinese myth about dragons living underwater. According to the myths, these underwater dragons attack ships passing by. The stories began circulating as far back as 1,000 years ago. It is said that the conqueror Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, tried to invade Japan in 1274 and 1281 AD. However, he failed in both attempts. He lost his ships and 40,000 crew members in this triangular zone, reportedly due to typhoons. The Japanese then believed it was higher forces who sent the typhoons to save them from their enemies. Later, divers and marine archaeologists discovered the remains of the Mongolian fleet in this region. Another legend dates back to the early 1800s. It describes a mysterious woman sailing through the Devil's Sea in a ship that looked like a jar for burning incense. But it is still unknown what kind of ship it was and where it was headed, and whether it was there at all, because at the time, there could not be any reliable evidence, even theoretically, so that you and I could check out the proof. But in the mid-20th century, things were better. Besides, the ships didn't stop disappearing in this place. In the 1940s and 1950s, several fishing vessels and more than 5 warships disappeared in the area. In 1952, Japan sent a research vessel to investigate the cases of ships missing without a trace in the Dragon Triangle. But it too suffered the same fate of its predecessors. The wreckage was later found, but its 31-man crew was missing. After this incident, the Japanese government declared this area dangerous for sea travel and transportation of goods. Moreover, all attempts to uncover the facts behind the mystery were also thwarted. But people still plotted hypotheses, trying to give a scientific explanation for the so-called paranormal phenomena occurring there. Among them, of course, were also people who had a rather indirect relation to science. According to British-American naturalist Ivan Sanderson, ships disappear in the Devil's Sea because of the complex interaction of hot and cold currents. And this might have been a reasonable version, but Sanderson attributed this to some obscure changes in the state of the electromagnetic field that capture passing ships. The reputation of Sanderson, fond of everything paranormal, left his theories in the camp of ufologists and conspiracy theorists. Another less unscientific hypothesis suggests that there are underwater volcanoes in the area. Their eruption could be the cause of shipwrecks and the source of stories about dragons pulling ships with crews underwater. An even sounder scientific study says that shipwrecks happened because of methane hydrate. This gas often accumulates in natural reservoirs on the ocean floor and can pose a serious threat to ships. Bursting from the deposits, the gas sharply reduces the density of water, which leads to a sudden and rapid sinking of the ship. This reason, by the way, is referred to as a scientific explanation for the disappearance of ships in the Bermuda Triangle as well. Of course, these are not all the dangerous places in the world ocean. It is so vast that mankind has revealed only a tiny part of its secrets. Let us hope that in the future, the ocean will pose fewer threats to us, although it seems that it expects the same from us.